Today's video comes from Joseph Legerman 23. In my revision, I've been trying to come up with reasons for why it is authors give the characters names that they did. He's got some interesting ideas about Inspector Gould, but his question is actually about Of Mice and Men. For example, Lennie. So there are in fact lots of reasons why Lennie might be called small. On the one hand, it could be an ironic joke, commenting on his immense size, so it works as just a juxtaposition. However, it's also a reflection of how society judges Lennie. Society sees him as small and inconsequential, and therefore worth so much less than able-minded men. So it's about prejudice against people who aren't intelligent, or I suppose that's too weak, people who have mental difficulties. Or it is a comment on us all. Remember, Lennie is the only innocent character in the novel, and he's innocent because he doesn't understand the difference between right and wrong. He's like Adam and Eve were in the Garden of Eden before they ate of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. He doesn't know what good and evil are. And so he is small, he's like all of us, and therefore we're all small, we're all like mice in the eyes of fate, or if you think it's a religious book, in the eyes of God, which is why it is so easy to take a life. So fate doesn't care about us, or God doesn't care about us, or the society doesn't care about us, just like it doesn't care about Lennie. And therefore we have Curly's wife's death is casual and offhand, happens really quickly, and Lennie's is also really sudden. Life is expunged very, very quickly, and in that sense Lennie is small, but we're all small. Or the other possibility is that society places so little value on life, especially Lennie's, which is why none of them fear imprisonment for having Lennie killed. They're all quite happy, whoever finds him is going to kill him, and they're quite happy to do this because they think the law will be on their side. In other words, life has very little value in American society at this time in the 1930s. Now, Steinbeck could also be arguing that during the Great Depression, when people are coping with massive poverty, that life becomes even smaller and has even less value. Finally, our lives are as brief as the lives of mice, not literally, but metaphorically. We're snuffed out very, very quickly. And this is an idea that pervades lots of literature. You might have come across it in Macbeth with the image of out, brief candle that he compares his wife's life to. Life is just like a candle, and it flickers and then dies. And it's a similar idea that Steinbeck uses by comparing mice to men, deliberately in the title, Of Mice and Men. And finally, you can also link this to the ending, where Carlson says to Curly, now what the hell do you suppose is eating them two guys? Because he and Curly have a total lack of emotion at Lennie's death. His existence has that small a meaning to them. And so the final reason that Lennie is called small is to illustrate how little worth society places on his life. Okay, now why is George called George Milton? Well, John Milton wrote a very famous poem, which, as you can see, actually is a book in 12 parts, all written as a poem, called Paradise Lost. And it's about how heaven was lost. And you can easily see that Of Mice and Men has a similar theme. This dream of heaven, represented in the Dream Ranch, is never realized. Crook says there is no such thing as heaven. Nobody ever gets any land. Nobody ever gets to heaven. It's all a great myth, he says. The actual poem is about Satan's revolt against God. So Satan challenges God and tries to overthrow him. So you could read into this that Steinbeck is trying to attack the very idea of a benevolent God in Of Mice and Men, which is why Lennie is killed, which is why Curly's wife is killed. There is no God looking after us. There is only a human instinct, which isn't very different from animal instinct. And even when humans try to do well, like George does, his benevolent act is actually killing his friend. It's not much of a choice. So in this reading, George shows that we have lost paradise because God has abandoned us. There is no God. But of course you can read it the other way, that we've lost paradise because we've turned away from Christian teaching. We've stopped looking after our fellow human beings. We've stopped following the teachings of Jesus Christ. So you can take that perspective on the novel if you wish. And finally, one possible way of looking at the novel is through this quotation from John Milton in Paradise Lost. The mind is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven. And this, to me, seems to be a commentary on George. The dream ranch is still possible for him, even after Lennie is dead. The money is available, the ranch is available. This could become the heaven they've all been dreaming of, but instead he ditches that idea. He abandons it. He tells Candy he's not going to pursue it, and he turns towards the hell of the migrant worker, working a month on a ranch and then moving on. And he actually chooses that in preference to heaven. So if you take that view, George is called Milton because he rejects heaven, the image of it on earth, and actively pursues hell and his own suffering. So, plenty to think about, more than enough for the A star there. If you'd like more revision videos, don't forget to subscribe.